Hello again. The Practical Animal channel is for you if you want to know what it takes to work with animals. Today's subject is birds of prey. My name's John Beaumont, and join me on an around the world survey of jobs with animals. Most weeks I speak to people who work with animals. Working with animals is all I ever wanted to do. And if that's true for you, then please consider subscribing to the channel. I need 100,000 subscribers to get interviews with personnel from the big zoos. By subscribing, you won't miss an interview. Also, you can use some of the questions that I ask my guests in your own job interviews. And if you are a student of English as a foreign language, you can use the interviews as listening material, as you will hear a variety of accents. My next guest is Amanda Borlas, co-director of the Harrogate Birds of Prey Centre in North Yorkshire, England. She joins me to talk about jobs with birds of prey. Are the new rules that are coming in killing off birds of prey centres? Yes, there. And we're away. Fantastic. Hello, Amanda.
Hi.
Amanda, what can you tell me about this fantastic bird on your fist?
Well, this is Puck, and he is a northern white-faced owl. He is about 2 years old now. He was born here at the centre. His parents live next door to him. And he is, as you can see, a trained owl. So these guys originally come from Africa, Kenya, Uganda, that sort of the side of Africa. And yeah, he's a lazy little beggar. He's probably the hardest owl I've ever trained. Didn't actually think he wanted to fly whatsoever, as he literally just sat on a post for a few months. And then just one day, he suddenly flew from post to post beautifully. So he had been listening to his lessons.
That's great. Amanda, please, can you describe your connection with birds of prey?
So basically, it's certainly not my professional career from the start. So I started off as a hotel manager, and my husband was very interested in birds right from a child. So he bred parrots, and then it became birds of prey, and he went into a falconry centre and studied that. And then we decided to open up our own little centre. And so then I learned really off him. So he's kind of the falconer, but I kind of know quite a bit, but I don't profess to be an expert in any way.
Amanda, what are the goals of your Harrogate Birds of Prey Centre, please?
So really, it's about educating children and adults alike, to the different species of owls and birds of prey. And it's really what we wanted to do was there's a lot of myths around. I think there's a lot of myths, especially around owls, actually. And we just wanted to educate people a little bit better, and to promote conservation, and with our UK birds especially. So we've got a few of the UK birds here, and with barn owls, there's quite a bit that people can do to help them as well. So that's kind of our premise, and we just wanted people to respect respect animals and birds alike. And so, you know, a lot of children and a lot of adults alike do not know how to behave around animals and birds, and it's that kind of thing that we wanted children to come into the centre and get close to them, but also these are what you need to do, and these are what you don't, you know, you shouldn't do. So that's really it. You know, we're only a small unit, but we do get through to a lot of people.
What jobs are there with birds of prey, please?
So of course you've got your standard falconry, and so you can train to be a falconer. You can train to be a falconer's assistant. Thank you. It's just having a little flap about. It's just seen the spaniel come in. You're not keen on the spaniel, are you? And also, you know, there's jobs to do with breeding of birds of prey. And as I think we're coming on to different aspects of it, you know, that it is an industry that is not going to go upwards, I feel. So, and there's a lot of jobs obviously in conservation now, and I think probably going forward, this will be an area, if you are interested in birds of prey and working with them, this will be a particular area that may grow rather than some of the industry which is declining.
Which sectors of the industry are declining, Amanda? I mean, do you mean pest control or breeding?
No, so of course that pest control is another one that you could go into. But what I mean is for centres like well, really bigger centres than us that have had people round, have had, you know, birds that do flying displays. This is going to be very much more difficult in the future because there's been new laws passed. So you are probably going to see much fewer birds of prey centres, and already a massive one that, you know, has been kind of, you know, our centre point has now gone. So, and she is getting into conservation. So yeah, it's going to be a tricky time for falconers, definitely.
Mm-hmm. I think we'll come back to that,
Yeah,
because it's a really interesting point that you make.
yeah.
In the meantime, Amanda, which books or people or meetings have most influenced your thinking?
So I think Jemima Parry Jones is a falconer, and she's a daughter of a very, you know, one of a very influential falconers, Philip Glazier. She's written so many books, and she is so knowledgeable and is so passionate about birds of prey. Her whole life has been basically devoted to them. If you go to her centre, it's very much a case of they are there, you know, and you are literally a visitor. If you don't behave, you'll be out. And she's been known to tell many a visitor off for certain things. But again, so she has a centre down south, but that is now closed. So, and I think that is because of these new laws coming in about tethering and about all the rest of it. So she's got one centre left, which is up north in Helmsley in Yorkshire. But I'm wondering in the next 5 years how that will pan out as well. And another people of influence, you know, I very much have taken a lot of advice from one of our specialist vets that we go to. He's called Mark Nagwib, and he's in the veterinary practice of Battle Flats in Stamford Bridge, and he's super knowledgeable, you know, because of it is a very specialist subject for vets. So, and they don't get very much training in their normal 5 to 6 years training. And he, you know, he's helped us tremendously. This little fella would not be alive without Mark. He developed a respiratory infection a year ago, and we could not get for love nor money any vet in the local area to see him, and the specialists were full up. So it's a real tricky one, trying to get provision for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll come back to that one as well. You're covering so many interesting points. I don't want to lose my place. So yeah, we'll come back to that one. But Amanda, when I was working for one of the big breeders, and one of the people that he was employing said, well, how many display birds can a falconer reasonably manage in a day, Amanda?
So if you are, so you're talking about somebody who's like full time, that's their job. So it's all about the time it takes to literally husband a group of birds. So I would say you will have to, obviously you've got to get that bird, you've got to put equipment on that bird, you've then got to weigh that bird to see if it's at the right weight, and then you've got the flying time, etc. So I think experienced falconers would probably be able to do 6 to 8 birds if that was their job in a day. And it depends on the daylight hours as well, doesn't it? But to fly a bird, you're probably talking about, to give it a good flight or a display, you're probably talking about half an hour of each bird to do that. Plus, of course, you've got all the rest of your stuff to do for your other birds. So, yeah, I would say about that.
For somebody watching this, Amanda, saying, I want to do what she does, can you please describe your career from start to date?
So, like I say, I'm not a falconer by trade. I'm not an animal expert by trade. I actually work in children's physio. So I'm a practitioner in children's physio, and I work for a hospital. So literally about 10 years ago, when we set up this place, we set it up with just birds of prey. So we had quite a few more birds of prey than we have now, and it's grown from there. So we still work, but we do this as well, as mostly at weekends. And what we found was that just having the birds of prey alone was not enough to break even with our costs, really. So what we had to do was we now have meerkats, we now have exotics, and it's mainly to do with the weather. Because if you've got people coming round, and we offer bespoke experiences, really. So people come round in a small group, so it doesn't it doesn't frighten the birds, doesn't frighten the animals. They come round in small groups of no more than 6. But we were finding the weather conditions, because it rained so much and because birds of prey are not weatherproof, we couldn't do it, so we'd have to cancel. So we were like, we're going to have to try and do something that, if we want to keep all our birds, we need to do something that's going to at least break even or make a little bit of money. So we started off with other animals, and this means that then they can do all the bird experience of holding, flying, but they also go in with the meerkats. They feed the meerkats. They go into the indoor exotics bit and can do that. And so that's kind of where we've developed to now. And yes, we have downsized the birds a little bit, just so I can manage them, because if I don't want to ever have birds that I can't. We had a Harris hawk. Now he wanted to hunt, and I did not have the time to hunt with him, so he was rehomed, because the owls are not so time consuming, because they're not really bothered about flying. You'll only see an owl flying if it's hungry or it's been chased by something else. They're quite happy to sit on their perch all the time. Whereas our buzzard will certainly let me know if he wants to go out and about. So yeah, we've sort of got it to a state where we've got enough for me to be able to look after them properly and to have enough interest for people to come round. But also if the weather is bad, then we can go into an indoor bit and have some of that as well. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with our careers at the moment. It'd be lovely to do this full time, but it doesn't pay enough for us to do it full time at the moment. That's where we're at.
For that person watching this thinking, yeah, bring it on, this is for me, what skills and personal qualities does it need, Amanda?
So I would say your first and foremost is patience. It's everything, and especially with birds. If you're training a bird, you can be stood there for a considerable period of time, just like this one, who, well, yeah, it took hours and hours of training with this, and I had nearly given up with them and just thought, you know what, you'll sit on my glove, you'll be fine when people come round. If you don't want to fly, then so be it. So patience is a massive one. And then just really, you don't have to have a massive degree level of knowledge, but you really need to know the basics of looking for signs of distress, looking for all these things, because of when a bird is starting to look distressed, you're not going to have it for very long generally. They go downhill so quickly, and you've got to be really quick with getting them the help that they need. And if you just know what you can do in between that time when you can get them to the vet, then that's what you need. And just being kind and thinking about their point of view as well. They are a bird. They don't necessarily, you can tell if they don't want to be handled. So if we ever do handling things, we did start off doing handling things more kind of in shows and stuff, but it just gets too much for them, even when you're swapping the birds around. So it's your skill is watching for that bird's reaction to the things that you're doing, and knowing when to stop or when to think, actually, this is not a good day today. We'll give it a miss.
How can you tell Amanda when they don't want to be handled?
So generally, when they're really distressed, they'll open their beak and they'll do sort of like a little pant. Now that's when they're kind of really like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm really kind of. Other times they might just flap about a bit. If they're sat on your glove and they're constantly trying to get away, then obviously something is bothering them. Whether it, because quite often we'll get a bird out, and you'll have a look around the skies, and you'll have a look around to see if there's any danger, and there'll be nothing there, but they've seen something, because they have such so much better eyesight than we do. So you just got to be aware and read them like that. So yeah, so anything from panting to kind of trying to flap and fly, and pecking you hard. I mean, he pecks just to see if there's anything near, because he can't see near. But like, if they're really going for you, then it's a big indication that he's not very happy.
And how can you tell, Amanda, when they're going downhill fast, when they're not very well at all?
So generally with birds, they will fluff themselves up and like go like in a very hunched thing. They'll quite often not even go on a perch, and they will just be like very quiet, and like they don't want to be seen at all. And you can kind of read them, because like if it gets to feeding time, and then it's still in that position, and it's not particularly bothered about food, that's generally when you're looking. With him, when he went downhill, it was quite a visible sign. It wasn't just something that I couldn't, like the signs I've been talking about. Then you might not know what's the matter. There's something going on, but you're not sure what it is. With him, we knew it was something respiratory, because he was like wheezing. He was wheezing in his breath, and he had his beak open. That's not usual. If any bird has his beak open for any amount of time, they may cool down for a little bit if they're hot, and that's okay. But if they've got their beak open a bit, there's something going on. There's something not right.
I wanted to come back to something that we touched on earlier, Amanda. How would you describe the bird of prey display industry today?
So we're still there at the moment, but because of the law being brought in 2027, which is going to say that no falconer can tether a hawk. I think this is going to impact falconry massively, because whilst I am not particularly keen on the act of tethering a bird in an aviary or on a perch for long periods of time, we always just free rein our birds in aviaries, even the flying ones. You know, there has been a school of thought in the falconry thing that they don't fly as well. They don't, you have to keep them trained like that. I don't really agree with that. But the fact of tethering for displays for a short period of time, again, you can tell if that bird is distressed. So if that's about going out and educating people and them getting interested and being, having some respect for them, then I think that's okay. But the display industry is going to struggle because they're not going to be able to train the birds if they're not allowed to tether them, because you can't go into an aviary and train a bird to fly very well. And if you're taking that bird that is expensive to you out for the first time on a train without a leash or anything, there's going to be a massive problem. We don't know the final details of that act yet, but from what's been put through and from very well respected falconers who are, well, one of the falconers I know that is actually married to a vet, and they're just like they're not including falconers in this debate. So I don't, I don't profess to be an expert in it, but I can absolutely see that if you're not going to be able to do displays and things, you're not going to get those people into your centres. And so there's going to be changes, and I do think it will be a declining industry.
Right. So how do you see things happening over the next 10 years?
So I think it will go, I think a lot of places will go more into conservation. I think they'll have to maybe, if they have the room, they'll have to open up aviaries to a bigger size, and it will be a much more visual thing that you go and you see a bird in an aviary. The tethering, it's not that you're stopping that bird from flying. You're just keeping them. You're keeping them so that they're calm and they know what they're doing. They know when they're on that perch that they're going to go and do something and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'm not very optimistic about the future of that side of the industry at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why places are diversifying now, because of their thinking. We've got 4 years before this comes in. And as I say, that one of the falconers that we know, that they've already rehomed all of their birds in one centre, and they had a massive collection.
Wow! So it seems like the whole tethering issue is going to have a massive impact.
Absolutely, from and falconry has been an ancient sport and all the rest of it, and a very skilled sport. And I don't see that's going to happen in the future.
Do you see centres becoming more like traditional zoos, for want of a better expression, or specialist breeding centres? How do you see it?
I think there'll be less of them, and I think there'll be more breeding centres and just zoo-like centres.
Amanda, what has been the contribution of falconers to bird of prey conservation?
So falconers have always obviously been very interested in their birds and interested to do the best they can. So, there's been lots of conservation work done with peregrine falcons, for instance. of releasing them back into the wild when their numbers had gone down. I think the numbers went down in the 50s, if I'm remembering rightly, and so a lot were kind of bred and then released back into the wild. And it's just the falcon's there to educate and teach conservationists that may not know, the exact birds well enough. They're there to sort of say, oh, well, this is a characteristic of this. This is and they can kind of educate them, the people in the conservation world. So I think they do have it. They've obviously had a big part in it, and barn owls, especially, they've really worked with the Barn Owl Trust in trying to increase the barn owl numbers, and that's worked really well. People obviously, the barn owl is kind of one of our most well-known owls, and people really, it's a very popular owl, so people want to help. So they've been putting boxes up with the loss of their habitat of barns and all the rest of it. So they've helped the Barn Owl Trust as well.
Amanda, how challenging has it been for you to find a suitable vet?
So that's a big challenge, is finding a good specialist vet. So so we live in North Yorkshire, so we have lots of vets near us. But our specialist vet that deals with birds of prey and exotics is about just over an hour away. Now, the trouble I've had in the past is, and you might know more than me about this, Matt, that when vets train, obviously they have 5 to 6 years of training, but the time that they spend learning about birds, and whether they be exotic birds, parrots, garden birds, tropical birds, or birds of prey, is minute. So they then go into practice knowing very little about them. And then there just hasn't been, it seems, much progress with licensed drugs. So if one of our local vets they may see them. So somebody that you'll get one vet in the practice that goes, okay, well, I've seen a couple, but so yeah, I'll see him, but I'm not an expert. So you're like, yeah, that's fine. Until I can get in, that's fine. That's good enough. So you will go, but because there's only one antibiotic that's Baytril that is licensed to birds of prey, to birds in general, that is all they will give you in your normal general veterinary practice. So they did that. So Puck here had Baytril, did nothing. So after 3 days of absolutely no signs of getting better and actually looking a bit worse, managed to get an appointment to the specialist vet. And that's the problem, because of specialist vets also have just normal pets. So trying to get an appointment with a specialist vet is quite tricky, even when it's an urgent case. And he was urgent by that time, and they could still not get me in that day. They could only get me in the next day. So I stayed up with him all night. I even gave him the guinea pigs antibiotics just to see if that was a different form that, I'd looked at, because I was just thinking he's going to die. Unless I give him something, he's going to die. So we'll try that, which, is not, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but when you're desperate, you'll go to any lengths. So when I got to the specialist vet, he then explained, because I was like, I'm a bit disappointed because even when he was really at his work, they wouldn't see him again. And he was like, yeah, it's because they are very reluctant to give any other drugs because there isn't any licensed. And then, of course, he had to train for, I think it was another 2 years, and that's using your own money then to train. So for another 2 years, after you've done your 6 years, after you've been in practice for a while, to do that, it's obviously a big undertaking. So that, there's not massive amounts of exotic vets about. So that's our biggest challenge with vets. that they, unless it is something that will be treated with Baytril, and obviously Baytril is actually quite a strong antibiotic. So to be starting off anything with this, they've started to become immune to it as well, of birds. So that's not great either. It just needs some development in the pharmaceutical line, and a bit more education on those. And whether that will happen in veterinary studies, I don't know, especially with people keeping more birds and more exotics. They may then go down that line. But at the moment, it's, that's one of the things you've got to think when you're getting an exotic pet, where is your nearest vet? And, and they are expensive because of their, that's another aspect of it. They are going to be more expensive as well. So, yeah.
For somebody watching this, still on board, still really wanting to go for it, what advice can you offer somebody wanting to work with birds of prey, Amanda?
So I would just say, go and volunteer somewhere first. Go and volunteer, see what, and most falconry centres are desperate for volunteers. And that just gives you the expertise, the experience, and just what it takes. You'll see the daily management of it, and that will show you whether you can actually cope with doing that, and what it takes to undertake good practice with birds, because it's okay keeping them, but it is an absolute twice daily minimum thing. You've got to go check on them in the morning. You've got to make sure that they've got clean water, even though they don't drink. They may just like to wet their beaks, and and to pick up all the mess daily. And it is an undertaking, and that's before you even fly them or anything else. And yeah, just to learn all about the equipment. The equipment's massive. You have to file beaks, you have to do all this thing, and the only way you're going to do that, you can watch YouTube videos, you can do all the rest of it, but to actually do that, you need somebody that's experienced to help you file down a beak for the first time, or clip claws or whatever, and just learning how to put on equipment, everything. So you really need to get somebody that is they don't have to be a falconer, they can just be well trained in bird management. But that's what I'd advise first, and start with an easy bird as well. Start with ones that are easier to look after. So do not start with your peregrine falcons, your small gears and all the rest of it, because they're expensive birds, and because of the weight management is so important with these. If you get it wrong, they will just go, and not only do you feel absolutely awful that you've lost a bird, but financially it's not great either.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just working with birds, working with animals in general, it's not an easy job, and it's not a job that very often pays lots of money. However, if you are interested in birds and animals, as I was from a small child, it's absolutely worth it, because of they bring you so much joy, and you get so much enjoyment out of it. And if you enjoy your job, then that's half of it, isn't it? So, well, more than half of it. So yeah, don't be deterred. I might have been a little bit negative on here, but it's just that things are changing, and for the good in some ways. We now have to have a welfare license to have them, and we're inspected every 3 years, and that's a good thing. But the only trouble with it is there is just so much documentation. So like with every profession now, and me and my physio land, it's like this puts people off, because of we have to have a procedure for every single thing. Even though we're very small, we have to have a procedure for transportation. We have to have a procedure, risk assessment for every single thing we do. So that there's, we have files and files now, whereas we never had to do that in the past. And we did, when that was brought in, we did think, gosh, is it going to be even worth doing it anymore? Because this is massive timely process. So whereas you're thinking, great, this is a welfare license for the birds, And the animals, which of course you want them all to be looked after in a certain way. What we find is, because it's provided by the council have to do this. They don't have staff that know anything about animals. They know about procedures. So when they come round here and inspect us, they don't even look at the birds or the animals half the time. They just look at the procedures we have in place. So my fear is, if you're going to places that actually can bluff for some paperwork, but you're not looking actually at the enclosures of the animals, that's not really what the Welfare Act was about. So it's the lack of provision now for everything, isn't it? The cost of providing these people to come out and assess you, and it's tricky. So, but looking after animals and birds is fantastic, and the more knowledge you have about it helps you. And obviously, and you can make a difference depending what field you go into. You can make an absolute difference, and we need people to come in and care about things and go forward with them, because otherwise, you're going to become, lots of things are going to become more extinct or much rarer.
Amanda, it's been absolutely great speaking to you. It's been you've covered some really specific detail in a really clear way. So, Amanda, co-director of the Harrogate Bird of Prey Centre, thank you very much for being on the Practical Animal Channel.
You're welcome, and good luck on anything that your viewers do in the future. Good luck to them.